How to process a trauma while it's still unfolding. On the second anniversary of Israel's worst day of bloodshed in its history, Hamas still holds hostages and Israel's still demolishing Gaza. Often during the past 731 days, panelists on this show have insisted it's hard, even impossible, for the two sides to hear each other till the guns go silent. Guns have not gone silent yet. We'll, of course, ask about faint hope stirred by the U.S. plan that's on offer and about the impact of the longest war in Israel's history on its citizens torn between those who support a defiant prime minister who wants, in his words, a super Sparta state to take on all comers, and those who reject a forever war and a messianic land grab in the West Bank. Here in France, home to both Europe's largest Jewish and Muslim populations, a commemoration this Tuesday to mark the October 7th terror attack and the 51 French nationals killed on the day. France, where 2 years of killing innocent civilians in Gaza have eroded sympathy for Israel, particularly among young people. So, what does Israel stand for in 2025? How has it changed? Today in the France 24 debate, the open wounds of the October 7th attacks. With us, Gil Mihaly, editor-in-chief of Causeur magazine, who was with us on the Monday that followed that October 7th. Thanks for being with us.
Indeed.
From the Rhone Valley village of Alex in southern France, Aaron Tsigtiaou, research associate at the Forum for Regional Thinking. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you.
She's a native of Nazareth from Tel Aviv. We're joined by Palestinian-Israeli Shahd Bashara of the Standing Together advocacy group, which brings together peace activists from both sides of the divide. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Hannah Kimhi, professor of international relations at the Catholic University of Lille in northern France. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Reminder, you can always listen to the France 24 debate. That's right, listen to it wherever podcasts are streamed. The commemorations started at dawn, as and most notably at the site 2 years ago of that Nova Music Festival in southern Israel, where 364 died on the day, survivors and loved ones returning to the scene.
3 of our beloved friends unfortunately died here. Shon Davidashvili, Evgeny Postel, and Lior Tkach. 3 of our friends, and today we're mentioning the 2 years from the event, and still we cannot capture it, like believe that it really happened.
She was so alive and so colorful and so intense that the house is much quieter. And it was like yesterday.
Yeah, and more commemorations have followed. Before we go to our panel, let's go to Jerusalem and correspondent Noga Tarnapovsky. Noga, tell us about the mood and the latest on this October the 7th, 2025.
The mood in Israel is complex. It's incredibly fraught here, Francois. It's neither anger nor really hope, despite the hope provided by the renewal of talks in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. It's the feeling of an open wound in Israel. I want to quote one of the commemorative radio programs this morning that simply said, it's been October 7th has been 2 years. We're at the 2-year mark of that day. And that really does reflect, I think, the ongoing trauma among Israelis. And, you know, after this very strange day today, in which civil society groups and citizens and bereft families, you know, if you take into account that 1,200 people in a country of just 10 million were killed on that one day, and you extrapolate the circle of people close to each individual, and then a little less close, and then work colleagues, we're talking about a significant part of the country that is in active mourning, if not still in active shock, and there have been no explanations. And because the government has refused any investigation, and parallel to these commemorations and the sort of heartbreak of the day was a government that even at this late hour of the evening has yet to issue a single commemorative statement even. We saw France and Canada make public declarations to commemorate this day. The state of Israel, the official state of Israel, seems to be trying to simply pretend this never happened. And that is something that keeps the wounds open and agape, because no one can really find closure or understand or encapsulate in any way this experience.
Noga Tarnopovsky, many thanks for that live update. You mentioned there countries like France with commemorations. As we speak, they've lit up Berlin's Brandenburg Gate with the Israeli flag and with the sign of the hostages there. Bring them home now. Later there'll be a rally in Tel Aviv. Gil Mehaly, your thoughts on the fraught mood as described there by Noga Tarnopovsky on the second anniversary?
Well, actually, the October 7th is the date that everyone remembers, but the real divide started on January 4th, when the government announced the judicial reform, and then we saw the
January
real
4th of
2023.
23.
The elections were on November 2022. And Netanyahu took about 2 months to form a government. And one of the first things that they announced was that they are going to change the regime. They're going to try to abolish the constitutional control of the executive and the legislative. And this is when we saw what is the real dividing line in Israel. And to make a caricature, it's how far you are from the synagogue. What is the content of Judaism in your Israelity? This is the dividing line. Then happened October 7th. There was a union for about a couple of months, and then the Israeli society, every camp found its original place, the place that he was in since January 4th, with an additional agenda regarding the handling of Israeli national security from 2009 until 2023, meaning the years of Netanyahu in power, and of course the months leading to this catastrophe during this big debate around the question of Israel's regime and the real deep sense of what Zionism and the state of Israel stand for.
Is that been in suspense since, or is it something that's in the foreground when we're talking about a fraud?
No. This is the dividing line. I mean, what we should commemorate in a couple of months is January 4th. October 7th is a painful incident. It cost a lot. It implicates the whole region and most of the world. But when we are talking about Israel, Israeli society on October 6th was divided. People talked about civil war. Maybe they're exaggerated, but it's not something that people say lightly. There was an atmosphere of we are basically back to 48. We are in front of the most basic decisions that we have to make in order to decide what kind of country, what kind of constitution, what are the relations between Israeli and Jew, what is the place of others in this city or this polis, this political body. And October 7th put inside of this the Palestinian question, which is, of course, part of the big question of what is Israel.
Eran Tzidkiyahu, let me ask you, where were you on October 7th? And do you agree with Gil Mehaly that about this notion that something broke much earlier than October 7th?
Well, I was in my house in Jerusalem with my family. It was a Saturday, Shabbat, and we were just sleeping. It was early in the morning that we heard the alarms, and we rushed down to the bomb shelter. In Israel, almost every building has a bomb shelter, every neighborhood, every house has a safe room. So we hurried to the bomb shelter, and with our neighbors, looking at the phones, we realized pretty fast that this is an unusual event. You mentioned that I'm in the Ron Valley now. So this morning, October 7, my wife and myself, we're both scholars. We looked at each other and we said, that will be a good time to go on a sabbatical. We've been postponing our sabbatical, our research sabbatical. And on October 7, we've decided, it took us 10 more months, of course, to organize it. And we came to France. Yeah, that morning we were in Jerusalem. And I agree that in order to talk about October 7, we need to talk about October 6, and not only October 6 and the judicial coup, the judicial reform, and the last government, the criminal government, now we can say that, of Israel, that brought this entire situation upon us. It is a policy that's been ongoing at least since 2009, maybe earlier. We can call it conflict management. We can manage the conflict. In this context, Hamas was an asset. This is why Netanyahu paid Hamas and created the reality that brought us to October 7. I also want to talk about October 8, because it's not only this fracture, this disaster of October 7 and what led to it, what happened after October 7, the Israeli retaliation, the disconnection of Israeli society from the reality, from what's happening actually in Gaza, how the world sees Israel. So it's not only about October 7, it's about the 2 years that passed and what happened to Israel in these 2 years. It's a huge fracture and a deviation from Israel's course, historical course of, relying on allies, being connected to the world, being part of the international community. And I think many Israelis don't understand the situation and Israel's status, what happened to Israeli status in the past 2 years.
How are people today in Israel informed? Because earlier we were speaking with filmmaker Amos Gitai, and he was saying to us how, for him, a core issue is that the Israelis don't see enough the Palestinian suffering, and the Palestinians don't see enough the Israeli suffering. Would you agree with that? Are people seeing what's going on in Gaza?
Well, a research was issued just recently by a think tank, an Israeli think tank called Molad, together with a university in the UK, about Israeli media and how it is hiding the reality from the Israeli citizens. So if you look at Channel 12, I don't have the data right now under my hand, but it is really, I would say, in my visits this year, and I've been visiting Israel frequently in the last year since I've moved to France, there is a strong notion that Israelis live in a virtual reality, disconnected from not only from what's happening in Gaza. We don't see what's happening in Gaza. We don't talk about it. When someone actually talks about Gaza and the suffering and the killing, it's been hushed. Immediately, a French-Israeli correspondent, Emmanuelle Elbaz-Phelps, brought it up in prime time, and she was hushed immediately. And this research that I mentioned earlier exemplified this virtual reality being created by the most popular channels, television channels in Israel, as an example, but it's true also in the news, except of Haaretz newspaper. Nobody really deals with what's happening in Gaza. Now, I want to be clear. I mean, we have lost 1,200 people on October 7, the Israelis, and almost 1,000 soldiers, if I'm not mistaken, have been killed. But in Gaza, we are around 70,000 dead, almost 20,000 children. Yes, the amount of destruction we're talking about a casualty 35 times more than what happened on October 7 and the 2-year war between since. It's in percentage, the death toll is 3,400% larger in Gaza than what happened in Israel. This is inconceivable that Israelis still talk only about October 7, which was a trauma and a catastrophe. I'm traumatized, my children are traumatized, my family, we are all Israelis are traumatized, but the world has moved on. And Israelis have been stuck because the government's policy, because of the media and the lack of coverage of what's happening. Al Jazeera was outlawed. You cannot watch Al Jazeera in Israel, the only channel that actually, could provide footage from Gaza. So you have to make an effort to look at foreign media and Arab media. Yes, so that's a big problem because Israelis are disconnected from the reality on the ground.
Shad Bishara, tell us about your October 7th, 2023, and what was your premonition at the time as to what would happen?
Actually, I was at my apartment. I lived in Ramat Gan, a city next to Tel Aviv, and by chance, my mom came for a visit, and us two woke up for the sirens, and eventually we understood the atrocious attack that Hamas has conducted, and then the war started. What we are, since the October 7th, what we are witnessing right now, a right-wing government that actually do dehumanize Palestinians, as well as talking about genocidal pronunciations such as flat in Gaza, starving the people, there is no innocent people in Gaza, and so on and so forth. And 2 years later, actually, what we are seeing, that Gaza is being totally destroyed. The lack of infrastructure, the hospitals, that there is no any universities anymore, and so on and so forth. But the awakening point, I think, since that day, that it actually we saw that the status quo has collapsed. And by meaning that we cannot manage the conflict, and we must actually try to find another resolution that can ensure safety, security, freedom for both people that live between the river and the sea, because we know, and we know that the Israeli security and safety is intertwined and inextricably linked with the Palestinian aspiration of freedom. And talking about this, we know that for decades there is this siege on Gaza. There is an increase in the settlers' violence, as well as settlement expansion in the West Bank. So therefore, we must actually understand this connection between the security and safety of Israelis and the Palestinian freedom. Yes, we know right now that the status quo has collapsed, and this is one of the biggest realization since October 7th.
Yeah, let me ask you about this, because Hamas on October 7th, it targets people at a music festival. It targets people in kibbutzes who at the time were often trying to help people over the border. In your dealings with peace activists like yourself who try to work across the divide, have some of those people turned away from peace activism since? Have they given up on this?
what we are witnessing right now, especially at Standing Together movement, we are witnessing actually more and people are actually looking and wanting this space that they can struggle together and work together in order to change the reality that we are living in and fighting for a better future for everyone. But also we cannot also deny that there is also more polarization going on in the world and also within the Israeli society that makes people more and more maybe withdraw from this because of the trauma, because of the collective trauma. But we need also a collective healing in order to come back and do activism in order to change the reality.
All right. There is hopes after 2 years that indirect talks that are taking place in the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh could bear fruits. The hopes have been stoked over the last 24 hours by the President of the United States, who's been pushing his 20-point plan.
We have just about every nation working on this deal and trying to get it done, something that you could say 3,000 years if you look at it in certain ways, or you could say centuries, but this is a deal that incredibly everyone just came together. They all came together. No, Israel's been great. They've all been good, Caitlin.
And in the negotiations, do you have any red lines in terms of Hamas disarming and whatnot? Are there
No, I have red lines. If certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well, and I think Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important.
Hannah Kimni, what's interesting is Donald Trump's position seems to have changed. He's no longer talking about a Gaza on the sea a resort where you deport all the people from the Gaza Strip. He's now actually seems to be hinting, although he doesn't say it, at endorsing some kind of a two-state solution plan in his words. Is this just talk or something happening?
I guess he's trying to find a solution, an urgent solution, since the situation is becoming more and more urgent. And I think Donald Trump and the U.S. in general, as well as the Arab world, lost patience and are trying to put pressure on both parties to find an agreement. Now, this agreement is still fragile. It may be successful in a way, but the real question is the future. Will this agreement allow Palestinian people to get a sovereign state or not? I think a 3-page document is not enough to assure a long-term solution regarding that matter.
You heard earlier Eran Tzikiyahu talking about how in Israel people talk about Gaza being shush, but what's the mood among your students, for instance, in the northern city of Lille? Because are they putting it front and center, what's going on in the Middle East? Or is it too unbearable to look at these images on a daily basis on your smartphone and your social media, and you just want to talk about something else?
I don't know about my students, but I can tell you about my friends. Since I'm still young and I was studying until recently. In Paris, I'd say people are getting more and more sensitive, and they really want to get involved in this struggle, which is the creation of a Palestinian state. And they see what's happening in Gaza. We said before that in Israel we don't really have access to images of what's happening. In France, it's the case. We still have media who show what's have been happening in Gaza, and also social media, I think, plays a massive role within the young generation. So I'd say the French Gen Z is watching what's happening and cares a lot.
Gil Mehaly?
I just wanted to say about what Israelis get to see and what they think that in a perspective, I don't know many societies, even the United States during the Vietnam War, that had access to the suffering of the other side, or what changed the public opinion in the United States was not the bombing of Hanoi. It was seeing their own sons and brothers getting killed or wounded in the battlefield. So I think it's too harsh to say that the Israelis don't want to know. It's natural. They are in war. They are angry. They live in a neighborhood where things like our colleague here is doing is unthinkable. Israelis dehumanize others. Okay, and the Egyptians and the Turks and the Iranians, and I mean, Israel is a Western society. Inside this Western society, there are quite a few currents of oppositions. People are getting some violence and a lot of verbal violence because it's war. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that it's statistically, not morally. It's statistically, this is the normal situation in times of war and crisis. Now, as for the Trump program, the issue now is that Trump, with Israel and probably some of the Arab states, wanted to get the hostage thing out of the table immediately and put forward the formula that people against people. For Hamas, the hostages were
exchange of people for people.
Yes, for Hamas, it's a strategic card. They wanted to release the last hostages against full withdrawal of Israel from Gaza and an Israeli engagement with guarantees from the powers that the war is definitely over. Two things, which means that Hamas won because at that moment they go out from the tunnels and they march in the streets with the Kalashnikovs, and they said, we won, we are still standing after 2 years of war. So this is what Trump is trying to avoid, and this is what's going now in Sharm el-Sheikh. The Israelis and the Americans say, let's talk about the list of the people that you will get against our people, and let's talk about what time and what color of car we will use in the exchange. What the Hamas is trying to say, he said, yes, no problem, but Israel must withdraw more, and Israel must engage not for a ceasefire, but for the end of hostilities. So they're trying to change the deal, and the question is whether they will be able to persuade some of the Arabs to join them and then put pressure on President Trump and his emissaries, because everything is mixed. Within the room, there will be people who have stakes, personal stakes. They're going to make a lot of money. I mean, it's private. It's a private public initiative. This peace in the Middle East. So stakes are high. We are in quite a few dimensions at the same time: diplomacy, business, etc. And Trump, as you said, can change 120 degrees without a problem and without having to justify. So we will know in a few days whether or not Hamas has managed to create a linkage between the hostages and the strategic advance, or did he capitulate and release the hostages only against prisoners?
Aaron Tzidkiyahu, what there's for Donald Trump, is it all about the money, or is he also watching his own domestic public opinion? Within his own camp, there are divisions within the MAGA right in the United States after 2 years of what is Israel's longest war.
So before Donald Trump, I want to react about what Gilles just said. Israel is a Western society, but what Israel done in Gaza, and you can check the data and you can see what experts are saying, is beyond compare to almost any war, at least in the last 100 years. The ratio of civil casualties, of children, hunger, starvation of civil population, engineered starvation, and I'm talking as an Israeli. I am talking as someone that cares about my own society. I am an Israeli who fought for my country, who defended my country. Also, after October 7, I took part in the civil defense of my community. And this is unacceptable for me that my society, as Jill just described as a Western society, I don't know if Israel is a Western society or not, but for that matter, for whatever it's worth, this is unacceptable. And this is a defeat for Israel that lost its own path, its own morality. And I wouldn't just turn it away like this. Oh, it's war and enemies hate each other. I think we're in a big problem, and it will take us generations to overcome what just happened in these 2 years that will hopefully be over. Now, about Trump, what brought the 20-point plan is Israel's failed attack in Doha. And just in parallel, more or less, Netanyahu's remarks about the greater land of Israel, which brought the Arab world to a summit in Doha, and Assisi's speech, the Egyptian president, which actually presented a new strategic pathway that threatened Israel, threatened to end the peace agreement with Egypt. He called Israel an enemy, with Jordan, and also to cancel the Abrahamic Accords. This was probably heard by Trump's advisors and led to this 20-point plan, which was enforced on Netanyahu against his will. And the only way for this fragile vague 20-point plan to be implemented is through continuous Arab pressure on Donald Trump that will sustain his pressure on both sides. Both Hamas and Netanyahu don't want this proposed deal. They both would like. I mean, Netanyahu would like to continue the war. Hamas would probably like some interim situation of a weakened committee, an Arab committee that will manage the Gaza Strip, allowing Hamas to strengthen itself, etc., etc. The point is that this plan must be forced on both sides by the Arab world, the Muslim world, and Donald Trump. And it is the vector that the Arab world, even Turkey and Qatar, the last allies of Hamas, are now supporting this deal. The vector in the region is that the Arab world is now enforcing, or together with Donald Trump, and they have financial leverage on Donald Trump. Yes, so we all know that. That's something that's very important for Donald Trump, the business, the money, using these leverages to sustain constant pressure and supervision of the implementation of this very fragile 20-point plan. So that's where we are. And I think that with this continuous pressure, there is a potential for a new reality, an end to the atrocities, an end to the war. Hopefully, it will bring an end to the current government in Israel, which brought Israel to a complete disaster almost on every aspect of life, and maybe the beginning of reconciliation within Israeli society, and with the region, with the Palestinians, with the world.
Let me ask you, Shad Bishara, last month, particularly with that UN week we saw in New York, and Emmanuel Macron and Saudi Arabia co-hosting this summit for a two-state solution, this recognition, which take it as symbolic for now, of a Palestinian state by countries like France and former colonial power in the region, Britain. Is there momentum, or is this just something forced from outside that once the international community looks away, it'll go back to what we see now with two sides at daggers drawn?
what we are seeing, recognizing the state of Palestine, is, I think, one of the most important, let's say, steps that has been done recently, since we know that for decades, neither the Israeli government nor European government recognized the importance of independent Palestinian state for the Palestinian people in the region. But unfortunately, what we are missing at this critical moment is an Israeli partner that is willing to play and is willing to sit down on the negotiation table and to go and do a peace or resolution agreement somehow to ensure the independence as well as the self-determination of both people of this land. We know that we have millions of Israeli Jewish and millions of Palestinian Arabs, and no one is going anywhere. And the only way to ensure that everyone lives in safety, security, and freedom is the recognition of their independence. But unfortunately, right now, what we are seeing is a increase and the increase of the occupation, the military control, and we don't see even in the Israeli political spectrum, in the central, even what is called center or left, mainly Israeli parties, that we don't see anyone right now recognizing a Palestinian state. Even and therefore, to see that there is international call for the importance of accomplishment of Palestinian state is actually maybe the initiating step into a further pressure to get into a resolution.
And certainly the whole world's been watching for 2 years. Here in France, he may be a caretaker prime minister on borrowed time since Monday, but Sébastien Lecornu making the time to attend October 7th commemorations here in Paris, an exhibit organized by the CRIF, the Jewish umbrella group. France's president, as we were saying, spearheading that push for a two-state solution last month at the on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. During that trip, Emmanuel Macron took the time in an interview with France 24 and Radio France International, push back against the idea that a two-state solution is a reward to Hamas, and also to acknowledge the rise in anti-Semitism in this country we've seen the past 2 years.
Anti-Semitism is very much present in France and in Europe, but it is antithetical to the French Republic. So as we recognize Palestine, as we fight for peace in the Middle East, in the Near East, we must also continue against anti-Semitism. And we have to, in fact, take action against all forms of discrimination. We need to build back unity.
In the interview, Hannah Kimney, he goes on longer to explain this. It's a strange situation in this country, the perspective people have when they look at the Middle East. You have some of the biggest supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu today are from the far right, whose movement is rooted in Vichy France, which collaborated with the Nazis. And here you have this awkward moment where the French political system the French political parties are having a difficult time when it comes to this conflict and what's been going on.
Yeah, I just want to react about the recognition of a Palestinian state and say that yes, it's a step, but it's far from being enough, obviously, and it's like baking a cake with only flour. It will require a lot of international support, and when we look at the footage of Gaza, it's absolutely obvious that we're far from having a Palestinian state, and recognizing it won't be enough. Now, about the French Jewish...
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there an October 7th effect on France?
Obviously, not only on France, but all over the world. I think it was a massive shock. And I think on the 7th, especially for the Jewish community, and then on the 9th, 10th, and for 2 years for the rest of the world regarding the Gazan side, the Palestinian side. But I think the Jewish community is traumatized, and I think this conflict, this war, impacted them a lot, which is quite delicate because it shouldn't prevent anyone of criticizing or debating the situation in Israel, and this whole situation became very difficult to handle politically and socially. There were many clashes on campuses in France, but less than in the US, I'd say. And I think it's difficult to manage it, to handle it as, for instance, a teacher or a head of a university, because how can you separate, for instance, Zionism and Judaism in a debate? You know, it's hard for people to be clear about this. And I'd say a lot of people don't really know about the conflict. They just know what's have been happening since the 7th, right? But I think today we need a lot of clarifications and informations, and that's why it's very important that we keep informing people through social media when it comes to younger generations and traditional media.
But we can be very optimistic because people find it very, very easy to say that Islam and Islamism has nothing in common, that of course they are terrorist Islamists, but it's nothing to do with Islam. So I think that they are intellectually cabled to understand that Zionism and Judaism are also a very complicated subject, and you need to make some nuances.
All right, let me ask you about this, the question of nuances, because it was 10 years ago, the terror attacks against the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. World leaders converged on the French capital at the time. The Prime Minister of Israel at the time, his name was Benjamin Netanyahu, and the President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, they turned up there. And after the attack against a kosher supermarket, which happened during the manhunt for the Charlie Hebdo killers, Benjamin Netanyahu encouraged French Jews to emigrate to Israel. He gave a speech in which he said to all the Jews of France, all the Jews of Europe, Israel is not just the place in whose direction you pray. The state of Israel is your home. This question of the blurring of the lines between Judaism and Zionism, how much of it... does he bear any responsibility for that as well?
Of course. This is a very difficult question. There are, first of all, many people in France think that Judaism is the Catholicism of the Jews. It's not. It's not a religion. It's many things, and this is why there is no Catholic state. But on the other side, a Jewish state is almost normal. And if you know Ottoman history, you know that millet, which was 300 years ago a religious community, now means nation in modern Turkey. So it's difficult. You need to learn about history. You can't just talk about 3 monotheistic religions because they have nothing to do with one with the other sociologically and anthropologically. And then you can say this politician is trying to take advantage of something, and we follow or we don't follow. But it is a difficult problem, and people find it in their hearts to make a difference between Islam and Islamism, and say that Islamic terrorism doesn't represent Islam. So I think that they could have the possibility to understand Zionism and Judaism.
All right, that'll be the last word. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Gil Mihaly, I want to thank you. I want to thank Aaron Tzikiyahu for being with us from the Rhone Valley. Shad Bishara in Tel Aviv. Hana Kimhi, thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.